Dreamt I was born a girl, living alone in the world, passing the hours away. I looked into the face of sorrow, tempted by the taste of tomorrow and the scent of yesterday. That was only a dream of a dream. This world is not what it seems. We are the wind that carries the seeds. We are the roots of the banyan tree. We are the love offered on the wing that stretches across eternity. We are a chord in life's symphony. We are the silent awakening. We are only a dream of a dream. This world is not what it seems. We are the wind that carries the seeds. We are the roots of the banyan tree. We are love offered on the wing that stretches across eternity. We are a chord in life's symphony. We are the silent awakening. I dreamt I could not find you, always was a step behind you, could not see your face, wandering around the maze of illusion's dusty haze, soul with no resting place. That was only a dream of a dream. This world is not what it seems. We are the wind that carries the seeds. We are the roots of the banyan tree. We are the love offered on the wing that stretches across eternity. We are a golden light symphony. We are the silent awakening. We are only a dream of a dream. This world is not what it seems. We are the wind that carries the seeds. We are the roots of the banyan tree. We are the love offered on the wing that stretches across eternity. We are a golden light symphony. We are the silent awakening. And only love can lift a veil away. Only love can take its place. And I've traveled long and far just to come home to your grace. That was only a dream of a dream. This world is not what it seems. We are the wind that carries the seeds. We are the roots of the banyan tree. We are the love offered on the wing that stretches across eternity. We are a chord in life's symphony. We are the silent awakening. We are only a dream of a dream. This world is not what it seems. We are the wind that carries the seeds. We are the roots of the banyan tree. We are the love offered on the wing that stretches across eternity. We are a golden light symphony. We are the silent awakening. Life is only a dream of a dream. This world is not what it seems. We are the wind that carries the seeds. We are the roots of the banyan tree. We are the love offered on the wing that stretches across eternity. We are a golden light symphony. We are the silent awakening.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Kent. Welcome to our new musicians. Today in our shared pulpit, we have the Reverend Renee Rahutsky, affiliated community minister to this church. I am Heidi Schaefer-Bish in the role of worship associate. I also serve on the board of trustees. We value shared voices in the pulpit and shared ministry in all we do. I did want to say thank you to Heart Song, the band, for that wonderful music that they were playing as we came in, and the treat that you'll hear this service. So if you want to share a concern or a joy, please use the yellow cards available at the end of your row or maybe handed to you by a greeter. If you are new to the congregation, please reach out to find out more about us online on Zoom or on our website or in person. We welcome you and want to get to know you. Let's settle into ourselves, and open ourselves to sacred space. Receive some deep breaths. Even close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that for a moment. Just settle in.
Before we ring the chime and light the chalice, let's take a few moments to hold in our hearts the people in the Middle East right now, those who are caught in the fighting, the violence that is happening there right now, the instability in the world right now, the abdication of leadership in Washington during this time, all of the ripples of these events. Some of those ripples touch people in this room. We know they touch people all over the world.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice, the sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. The sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us.
Singing with love and the will to trust.
Singing with love and the will to trust.
Leave the rest behind.
Leave the rest behind. It'll turn to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us.
This is the sound of one voice.
This is the sound of one voice. One people, one voice. One people, one voice. A song for every one of us. A song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
As a student of yoga, I believe there is always uncertainty. But the rapidly changing rules of engagement during the pandemic fueled the sense that uncertainty was surely going to lead to anxiety. In recent history, our church's budget deficit became such an inflection point. Despite the changes around us, we often cling to something solid, such as a process. In early spring last year, the Board of Trustees met to review the budget for the congregation to approve. There was dissent among the board members regarding the new budget. Other leaders who were not board members shared their concerns. But there were meeting deadlines approaching. So by a close vote, the board moved the budget forward for the congregation to vote on it. Deadlines were sacred, of course, and we had to have a budget going into the new fiscal year. As the congregational meetings approached, the board realized there was more controversy than anticipated. But what could be done? Times of anxiety and uncertainty and inner turmoil often call for consultation. Reverend Stephen reached out to our primary contact at the UUA. That's the Unitarian Universalist Association. The Reverend Sunshine Wolf. During the board meeting, the Reverend Sunshine helped us clarify our roles as board members. They also called us back to our liminal action plan based on a workshop they had presented the previous year that had been guiding our priorities. Perhaps some of you were there. What the board realized as Reverend Sunshine spoke was that we as a congregation had changed during this time, and we had to find new paths to fulfill our mission. We were reminded by Sunshine that it is important to slow down. The deadlines were not as important as relationships. We named our values, including that we needed to work together to solve our problems. We could slow down the process to let something new emerge. In releasing ourselves from past imposed deadlines and processes, a new path began to take shape. This is when an idea previously proposed by a board member came back up. We could hold listening sessions. We could provide a space for our hopes and fears to be aired, and out of this space, some solutions might start to arise. And they did. The board returned with lots of new ideas. We believe the process also energized and provided some healing. It provided a new budget, not perfect, but agreeable. More agreeable, anyways. The UUA did not tell us what to do, but reminded us of the importance of relationship and of the ability to change. We needed to hear that. We were not alone. That's something else that was very important to hear. Many churches were struggling with the same issues, and that the wisdom that emerged could be shared beyond one church. I appreciate the UUA's willingness and ability to help us become grounded in our values, offer resources, and keep our movement, yes, our movement, healthy. In that spirit of unity, with something larger than ourselves, come, let us worship together. While Coyote Yost lights the chalice, let us recite these words by Deborah Falk. Let's do this in unison together. A chalice in our midst is a symbol of our liberal faith, a faith built on the foundation of freedom, reason, and tolerance, a faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice, a faith that visions a world flourishing with equality for all her people, a faith that demands the living out of goodness, a faith that requires thoughtfulness, a faith of wholeness. This tiny flame is a symbol of the spark of all this within each of us.
This time, if the young ones would like to come forward, or the young at heart, you can come forward too, for a story.
Now it's going to stay that high.
Good morning. Hi, Gareth. All right. So something I really love about being a Unitarian Universalist, one thing, is our fourth principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, right? So let's break that down. What does it mean? What does it mean to be free? What is free? Anybody? Gareth.
Out of pressure or stress.
Out of pressure or stress is what Gareth says. Yeah. Absolutely. Not under control, right? Able to make and act as you wish, as you hope. What does responsible mean? Gareth, go ahead. You're doing it right now. You're being thoughtful about your actions, right? You have an obligation to do something. Responsible is, it's part of your job. It's what you're supposed to do. You are responsible. So you are free and responsible in your search for truth and meaning. That's our fourth principle. So I was thinking about this particular principle and how this relates to the principles as a whole, right? Did you know that our principles were not always what they are now? It's true. Back in the olden days of 1960, there were only six. There were only 6 principles. So let's see here. What did the fourth principle say way back then in those dinosaur times? They had them in a different order, but this is what it says: to strengthen one another in a free and disciplined search for truth as the foundation of our religious fellowship. Now we say a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And even further in religious education, we say we search for what is true. All 3 of those things mean the same thing, right? They sound the same, but the language changed, so that others could feel included, could be included, and could understand the meaning. The language changing widens the circle. So if the circle is our faith, in here, where the use, right, in here, and then we change the language and the circle grows so that more people can fit in, right? All right, so let's see. There have been other times, I wanted to keep going, sorry. There have been other times when people saw the need to widen or make the circle bigger and change the language of our principles. And that began in the 1970s with women. Women began a movement amid the feminist movement. Women felt empowered to say, hey, you know, this doesn't represent me. This language excludes me. So back then, girls were not allowed to play sports. Girls were not allowed to get credit cards. They couldn't serve on a jury because people thought they were too fragile or that they should be home tending the children, right? They weren't allowed, in some restaurants, I thought this one was really weird. They're all weird, but this one was interesting. Was they weren't allowed to eat in a restaurant alone. What is that about, right? So the world was a lot different back then and for women. And women stood up and said, you know what? This world is sexist and patriarchal. And in here, in our church, we should be doing better. We should be living and showing by example and addressed this sexism and this patriarchy. And they did that when they pushed back on the language of our own principles. And guess who didn't like that? Any guesses? Gareth. The men. They didn't like it. They were like, come on. And the women were like, no, we're going to keep talking about this. And it took a really long time to convince the men and to convince others and even other women that it was time to make a change. But it worked. They did. They pushed through. They had lots of meetings. They did a lot of education. And they pushed and they pushed. And finally, the UU principles were adapted to take out that patriarchal language and to include women in the language. So they widened the circle, right? They opened the circle up. And those are the principles that we use today. Well, mostly, because it didn't stop there. Then in the 2010s, Black and Indigenous people of color took a look at our language again and in our principles and said, hey, we can do better. The principles don't feel complete and fully inclusive for us. And in this world with racism and injustice and oppression, we, Unitarian Universalists, should be very, very clear about where we stand in that fight for justice, right? It's not in there quite as clear as it should be. And it took a lot of time, and it took a lot of meetings, and people pushed back. But it's working. And now we have an eighth principle, right? And the circle's opening even wider to have more people inside. And it's not going to stop there. In fact, we're looking deeper again. Our trans and non-binary friends are looking at us and saying, what's with all this gendered language? Why can't we should be using non-gendered language that includes everybody. And I think, what do you think? Do you think they're going to be successful in that? Do you think that we're going to widen that circle even bigger, make it bigger? I do too. I think that's very exciting about our religion and our faith, is that we keep looking at it and we keep stretching and opening that circle, right? So I wonder, friends, how will our faith continue to open that circle wider to include everyone? And I wonder what your ideas are going to be to do that.
Each week, we set aside time to pause, reflect, and share important milestones and difficulties in our individual lives. We start this by centering ourselves in silence from the busyness of life in these times, just to be in the present moment, enveloped by a community of care. I invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze, to notice your breath, to loosen what might be clenched, to let the softness of your body connect to the solid ground below us, that sturdy ledge rock that we notice peeking out along the riverbank. Thus held, let us share sacred, silent space together. The 19th century English poet William Blake reminds us that joy and woe are woven fine. I could use a cup of joe, apparently. We share our woes and sorrows so that our stories are known and burdens shared. Hello, online members and friends. If you have a sorrow, please put it into the chat and I'll read it for everyone to hear. Kathy Slater shares that their Slater cousins are safe in Israel so far. Let us all pray for peace. We share your prayers. Scott Ashbrenner shares that he's recovering from jaw surgery. Kathy Kern shares that her mother had a serious accident and will have a slow recovery. Oh, we hold you, Kathy. That's a lot going on with your family and your mom. Kay Ekman shares that her uncle has entered hospice and is nearing life's end. Kay, we hold you and your family during this tender time. Ellen Doucette shares that she is sending peaceful wishes to a 90-year-old friend who is choosing to end her life this week by not eating or drinking. We send you our prayers, give you our prayers, Ellen, as you support your friend in this hard decision. We also share our joys so that our beloveds might rejoice with us. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to read them, just like I promised, to read the online versions. Becky Haynes asks for us to continue to pray for the Haynes family. You are in our prayers, Becky. And Alyssa Rockstar shares that her partner's family has had COVID for the third time. Oh, that's such a burden, Alyssa. We're holding you all in our thoughts and hope that healing comes soon and comes to stay. We also share our joys so that our beloveds might rejoice with us. Online friends, please share any joys you have using that handy Zoom chat, and I'll remember this time. And we have a couple here from the room. Diane shares that her grandson Jonah is celebrating his bar mitzvah next Saturday. Congratulations. I have a joy that friends, UU adjacent friends, Terry Leonino and Greg Artzer are in town, and they're giving a free concert tonight at the Kent Stage. You might know them as Magpie. They've sung at our church before. We actually sang one of their songs, Give Light, a couple of weeks ago, so they would love to see a lot of friendly faces there tonight. Becky shares the joy that the lantern's light was beamed. There was a beautiful workshop yesterday where we created lanterns for the holidays. Thank you, Becky, for that gift. I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, spirit of mystery and change. We humans are so complicated. We live lives of meaning, or try to live lives of meaning. We face struggles and challenges. We watch one another commit hurt and violence. And yet we are also sources of joy and caring and love, of creativity, of kindness. May we ground ourselves in the gifts of humanity as we work to change those parts that we are less proud of. May this community hold each other, hold those around us, create space to remind us that love is what matters most, care is what matters most. Care for all. Amen, and blessed be.
If music so sweet is your warm embrace in the pale moonlight. There is no loneliness if music so sweet is your bed of clouds in the rising dawn. There is no fear if music so sweet alone may live through all of time. There is no loss as she embraces you and you give in. Night she is darkest, and her stars more bright find their light in a burning heart. Night she is darkest, her blackness deep, when expansive clouds cover the moon. Night she is darkest when she is lone, when hope is a butterfly rising in your chest, whispering what could be. And love everywhere, transforming souls in divine power, is everything you know. And love everywhere, through the thunder that turns reality, lifts your heart gently. And love everywhere, sweet melody in silence, the darkest night into the lark's song she is singing.
I feel like this is the moment in the musical where we have the gentle song and then boom, we move into this, move into a plot change. So here we go. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. Yeah, some of you know that, right? So this Chilean protest chant from the 1970s is a reminder about how important it is for people to come together, united in their desire for sweeping social change. There's a running joke among Unitarian Universalists that getting ourselves to do anything together as a group is like herding cats, right? And yet, when you look at our history, time after time, we have been at the leading edge of sweeping social change. UUs were leaders during the second wave of feminism in the 70s that Colleen talked about, and in the 80s. It's hard to believe that only 50 years ago, in the 1960s, It would have been shocking to have a woman in the pulpit. Instead, you might have seen our names in the church bulletin stating, "Please join us for refreshments after the service. This week, our hostesses will be Mrs. Randy Rahutsky and Mrs. Randy Bish." Seriously. Colleen shared the story of how the UU Women's Federation worked hard to expand Article 2, what we call the 7 principles and 6 sources in our UUA bylaws. The women wanted to include sources beyond Jewish and Hebrew scriptures, and Christian scriptures, but they really wanted to replace patriarchal language like dignity of man and with the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That was in 1984. It took another decade, in 1993, to make similar updates to the new hymnal to replace the 1963 version. Lyrics were updated to include the feminine. We also added music from African American and other non-white traditions. In the previous hymnal, there were 0. During this transformation, we saw more and more women serving in lay leadership positions and entering the ministry. We saw worship become less head-focused and more heart-focused and embodied. Today, our national leadership includes women at every level. We also have leaders like Jamie Yandel, originally from our Toledo congregation, calling us to move to gender-neutral language. They started a movement to change our sources from referring to prophetic women and men to prophetic people. By freeing ourselves from culturally imposed gender roles, we advance our values in the world. We are saying, through our actions, that women, trans, and non-binary folk matter as much as men. The backlash we are now seeing reminds us of how important our shared values of gender justice is. Behind the women's movement, there was a lot of hard work, hurt feelings, conflict, and even anger. Behind this story, there was an endless stream of meetings. Meetings among women as they began to understand the oppression of patriarchy, meetings to figure out what their needs were, and more meetings to figure out what to demand to meet those needs. As we learned from Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without a demand. There were national meetings at our General Assembly to develop resolutions, study commissions, and eventually bylaws and policy changes. So I'm a geek when it comes to studying how groups of people make decisions. And I was recently introduced to the book, Freedom is an Endless Meaning by Francesca Polletta. And if you think about it, the title rings true. If we want collective liberation, if we want everyone to have their voice heard in order to thrive, we need to talk it through with everyone at the table. And talk it through, and talk it through. You can't herd cats because cats need to come to their own conclusions. Unitarian Universalists pride ourselves in taking time to study an issue and come to our own conclusions. But once we do, we are a united force. We become united in our commitment to gender justice because of those endless meetings. The people, united, will never be defeated. This year, we have a UUAY decision that is a turning point, much like the adoption of the 7 principles and 6 sources a generation ago. We are being called to commit to advancing our values of diversity, equity, and belonging, this time by BIPOC UUs, Black, Indigenous people of color. In the spring of 2017, Unitarian Universalism experienced a turning point in our commitment to racial justice. There was a hiring decision that was downright insulting to one of the finalists, who was a Latina. When the shameful details came to light, the UUA president, vice president, and my boss, who made the hire, all resigned. 3 BIPOC UU leaders, Aisha Hauser, Christina Rivera, and Kenny Wiley immediately developed a white supremacy teach-in to help the white folks unpack what had happened. They showed how the decision was business as usual in a dominant white culture, and explained how that dominant culture marginalizes many UUs, and not just BIPOC UUs. The UUA board appointed a commission to study and make recommendations. The result was the Widening the Circle of Concern book. In response to the report, the UUA has changed our hiring practices and policies, and we now have a much more diverse and welcoming workplace. We still have work to do. Our congregation has been part of the movement in learning to dismantle racism. We took the time to grapple with the idea of adopting an 8th principle with a commitment to racial justice as a core value of our faith. We studied the issue, came to our own conclusions, and voted to affirm it. We will give the new Article 2 proposal the same consideration. Again, this is hard work, often resulting in hurt feelings, conflict, and even anger. But what is emerging in our Article 2 conversations is giving me hope. I believe it will enable us to advance our values of diversity, equity, and belonging in the world. It will also help us UUA field staff when we partner with congregational leaders, which I will talk about in a moment. I mentioned earlier that the Article 2 changes we are discussing at the national level were giving me hope, especially in my work with UU congregations. Here is the preamble in the latest draft. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. One of the most important ways we advance our UU values in the world is how we live these values in our congregations. My job, and the job of my colleagues like Reverend Sunshine, who Heidi mentioned earlier, is UUA field staff for congregational life. Our team helps congregations live those values. We are the embodiment of the Association of Congregations that make up the UUA. Nationally, we're held together by our Article 2 covenant and shared values as congregations, much as the members of this congregation are held together by our congregational covenant and mission statement. This means we are accountable to one another. We at the UUA accompany congregations during times of change, challenge, and grief. We also provide counsel during times when folks are harming one another. Let me describe both kinds of accountability. In times of change or transition, when a congregation is feeling out of sorts, it is our responsibility as UUA staff to partner with leaders as they work through the challenges. We offer resources, stories, and connections to other congregations who are going through similar challenges. Here's an example. Back during the first summer of the pandemic, when everything felt like it was turned upside down, we started a national program called Retooling for New Realities. The program connected leaders from this congregation with leaders from other congregations all over the country about what they were experiencing. After learning from one another, each congregation developed strategies to work through the disruption. When there's a big disruption, like in March of 2020 at the onset of the pandemic, the UUA put all of its resources and connections to work. We assembled a panel of experts, including UUs who worked at the Atlanta National Center for Disease Control, to give us science-based guidance so that we could make clear safety recommendations about the need to isolate. We took the bold move to advise that our congregations stop gathering in person a week before state governments shut things down. Our administrative team and information technology folks brokered a deal with Zoom to get a group rate for all of our congregations. We hosted webinars with tips about how to craft meaningful online worship. We started Facebook groups to share tips and ideas about how to pivot to virtual church. We created a robust online lay spiritual care training to help build capacity in our congregation's care teams. Within a couple of weeks, we nimbly created a whole section of the UUA website populated with pandemic-related resources and up-to-date safety protocols. We also show up when a congregation is disrupted. When there is a disaster, trauma, or other emergency, we have a trauma response team available to help coach the congregation's leadership through next steps and offer resources for healing and resilience. We collect for and administer a disaster relief fund for our congregations. If there has been misconduct, severe conflict, or some other trauma, we'll come in and hold listening circles. We provide pastoral care to leaders when they are feeling isolated due to a conflict or other disruption. One of the hardest parts of our job as UUA staff is when congregational leaders behave in ways that conflict with our shared UU values. It is frustrating to visit a congregation that feels unwelcoming and exclusive. It's heartbreaking to work with a congregation torn apart by conflict because members start attacking one another or their minister. And it is infuriating to see a religious professional violate their ethical code, either through sexual or financial misconduct or by abusing their authority in other ways. But even with all of these big feelings that we have as UUA staff, we show up, grounded in the love that binds us, ready to be witnesses to what has happened and to provide a pastoral presence to those who have been harmed. But after the tears are dried and the anger quelled, our work is not done. We look for ways to prevent the harm from repeating itself. For lay leaders, we create and offer trainings like the one that was held here back in August, on communication, healthy boundaries, right relationship, safety, conflict, and what to do when there's destructive behavior. For professionals, we look for ways to hold ministers accountable when they cause harm to the people they serve. For example, quite recently, in the summer of 2020, bullying was added to the minister's code of conduct as a behavior that can lead to removal from ministerial fellowship. You may not know this, but this congregation's experience with our interim minister helped to shape those ethical guidelines regarding bullying, including a descriptive list of behaviors that are in the ethical code. This list of behaviors has also been extremely helpful for congregational right relationship teams. Members who feel bullied by other members can use the list to articulate the problem behavior and the harm it is causing. This brings us back to the draft language in the proposed Article 2. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. For the past 40 years, our 7 principles have included the phrase, encouragement to spiritual growth. I am excited that we are changing that somewhat pallid language to something that actually asks ourselves to stretch and grow by including accountability. We are making a commitment to practice what our new UUA president, the Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, calls communal care. She states, communal care is how we work for justice. It is how we teach one another and learn together. And it is how we resource our faith. Communal care is found in the small acts that tie communities together and is found in the seemingly impossible visions we carry for the future, visions that can only be realized across generations. Communal care calls on us to be good ancestors, to provide a foundation of love and justice that will sustain those who are yet to come. Communal care is love and justice woven fine. That is our work at the UUA. That is our sea change in this congregation and in our wider community. We are building a new way that calls us to live into community. We are building a new way that calls us to live our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Amen, and blessed be.
As a people who value community and being part of something bigger than ourselves, we acknowledge that we are called to contribute in some way, whether it be time, wisdom, creativity, caring, or treasure. Our ministries matter here in our congregation and in the wider movement and the larger world, which needs our values, inspiration, and support. Our special collection is for Equality Ohio in support of their defense of the legal rights of LGBTQ Ohioans. We hope you can offer something of yourself in keeping with your abilities. We will now take up the offering.
This piece I learned at the AUM conference this year from the author, Eleuthera, and she shared that she wrote it while her congregation was grappling with adopting the eighth principle or not, and that this truth came through to her, and she shared it in song, and she is overjoyed that we get to share it with this congregation today. So.
What does it mean to live in community? What does it mean to live in reciprocity? It means if one of us is chained, oh no, then none of us is free. Let's get on building that new way and take to the streets. Yeah, we gotta change. We gotta change. We gotta change. We gotta change. It's a call and response. All right, here we go. 2, 3, 4. What does it mean to live in community? What does it mean to live in community? What does it mean to live in reciprocity? What does it mean to live in reciprocity? It means if one of us is chained, no, no, then none of us is free. Means if none of us is chained, no, no, then none of us is free. Let's get on building that new way and take to the streets. Let's get on building that new way and take to the streets. We gotta change. 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 Here's yours. 1, 2, 3. We gotta change. One more time. What does it mean to live in community? What does it mean to live in community? What does it mean to live in reciprocity? What does it mean to live in reciprocity? It means if one of us is chained, no, no, then none of us is free. It means if one of us is chained, no, no, that none of us is free. Let's get on building that new way and take to the streets. Let's get on building that new way and take to the streets. Yeah, we gotta change. We gotta change. We gotta change. We gotta change.
Well, our time together in this service is coming to an end, but it is not the end of our work together. Let us say the chalice extinguishing words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. May we carry these in our hearts and minds until we are together again. And instead of singing our closing hymn, we have another offering from Heartsong.
My dear friend Lindsay took a trip to Israel and Palestine many years ago and shared with me about the efforts there for peace that she was engaged with. And her life influenced me quite a bit. She was my first yoga teacher. And when she was dying, I was with her for part of that time. And this song came through, and it was a favorite chant of hers, the Lokaha chant, if you're familiar with it. And so we made this change to the service today because I was thinking about Lindsay and all the other passionate people who work for peace in the world. Hopefully I can sing it now. Okay. Loka samasta Sukino bhavantu. Loka samasta Sukino bhavantu. Loka samasta Sukino bhavantu. Loka samasta Sukino bhavantu. Om Shanti Om. Om Shanti Om. Om Shanti Om. Om Shanti Om. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful and free. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful and free. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful and free. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful and free. Sing peace, sing peace, sing peace, sing peace. Loka samasta Sukino bhavantu. Loka samasta Sukino bhavantu. Loka samasta Sukino bhavantu. Loka samasta Sukino bhavantu. Om Shanti Om. Om Shanti Om. Om Shanti Om. Om Shanti Om. Loka samasta Sukino bhavantu. Loka samasta Sukino bhavantu.
Cornel West has said, justice is what love looks like in public. I would add that accountability is what love looks like in community. But that means we gotta change. We got to change to build a new way grounded in both our accountability to justice and our reciprocity in love. Go make peace. Amen.